The auction block in Gonzales, Texas, was no place for a woman in 1878, but there Lily Summers stood with her wrists bound, and her eyes cast downward toward the dusty planks beneath her feet. The afternoon sun beat mercilessly on the gathered crowd of men, their faces weathered and hard, their eyes calculating as they assessed her worth like she was nothing more than livestock. She could feel their stares crawling over her skin, and she fought to keep her breathing steady, to maintain what little dignity remained to her. Her Uncle Vernon stood off to the side, counting money he had already collected from advance bids, his greedy fingers shuffling through the bills with practiced efficiency. He had not looked at her once since dragging her up onto this platform, and she was glad for it. She could not bear to see his face, the face of the man who had raised her after her parents died, the man who had promised to protect her, now selling her off to settle his gambling debts. "Gentlemen, gentlemen," the auctioneer called out, his voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "We have here Miss Lily Summers, age 19, healthy as a horse, good with cooking and cleaning, and as you can see, easy on the eyes. Who will start the bidding at $50? Lily squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to be anywhere but here. The voices of men calling out numbers blurred together into a cacophony of greed and indifference. She thought of her mother, dead these past 10 years from fever, and wondered what she would say if she could see her daughter now. The thought brought tears to her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give these men the satisfaction of seeing her break. $100, someone shouted. $125, $150. The bidding climbed higher, and Lily felt her stomach twist with each new offer. She wondered which of these strangers would claim her. What kind of man would buy another human being like she was a piece of property? Her mind raced through terrible possibilities, each worse than the last. Then a new voice cut through the din, deep and steady. $500. The crowd fell silent. Lily's eyes flew open, searching for the source of that voice. The other bidders stepped aside, creating a path, and through it walked a tall cowboy with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore dusty leather chaps over worn denim, a brown hat tilted low over his brow, and a red bandana tied loosely around his neck. There was something different about him, something in the set of his jaw and the directness of his gaze that made him stand apart from the others. The auctioneer sputtered, clearly surprised. $500. Well, does anyone wish to counter? The crowd remained silent. $500 was more than most men saw in half a year. The cowboy stood there calmly, his hand resting on his belt, waiting. Sold. The auctioneer finally declared, bringing his gavel down with a sharp crack. To Mr. Yates Anderson for $500. Vernon rushed forward, his face flushed with excitement. "Mr. Anderson, a pleasure doing business with you. A fine choice. She will make an excellent addition to your household." Yates Anderson pulled a thick envelope from inside his vest and counted out the money without a word. His face remained impassive as Vernon snatched the bills and counted them twice, his eyes gleaming with avarice. The auctioneer produced a contract, a legal document that transferred ownership of Lily to this stranger, and Vernon signed it eagerly. "The girl comes with this contract," the auctioneer said, handing the paper to Yates. "It is binding under Texas law. She is yours to do with as you see fit." Yates took the document and finally looked up at Lily. Their eyes met for the first time, and something passed between them, some unspoken communication that Lily could not quite decipher. His expression was unreadable, but there was no cruelty in those gray eyes, no hint of the malice she had expected. He climbed the steps to the platform and approached her. Lily tensed, unsure what to expect, but he simply reached out and untied the ropes binding her wrists. The rough hemp fell away and she rubbed at the red marks it had left on her skin. "Come on," he said quietly, his voice meant only for her. "Let us get out of here." He turned and descended the steps, clearly expecting her to follow. Lily hesitated only a moment before gathering her skirts and hurrying after him. What choice did she have? The contract gave him legal ownership of her. She was his property now, bought and paid for. Vernon called after them. "Take good care of her, Mr. Anderson. She is worth every penny." Yates did not acknowledge him, and Lily was grateful. She could not bear to hear her uncle's voice any longer. They walked through the dispersing crowd, men stepping aside to let them pass. She kept her eyes on the ground, aware of their stares, their whispers. By tomorrow, everyone in Gonzales would know that Vernon Summers had sold his niece to settle his debts. Yates led her to a hitching post where a magnificent chestnut mare stood waiting, her coat gleaming in the sunlight. He untied the reins and turned to Lily. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do not call me sir," he said, but not unkindly. "My name is Yates." He swung up into the saddle with practiced ease and extended his hand down to her. Lily took it, surprised by the warmth and strength of his grip, and let him pull her up behind him. She settled onto the horse's back, unsure where to put her hands, but as Yates urged the mare forward, she was forced to grab onto his waist to keep from falling. They rode in silence through the dusty streets of Gonzales, past the general store and the saloon, past the church where Lily had attended services every Sunday before her uncle's drinking had gotten so bad he could not bear to face the congregation. People turned to watch them pass, and Lily buried her face against Yates's back, hiding from their judgmental stares. Once they cleared the edge of town, Yates urged the mare into a canter, and the rhythmic pounding of hooves against hard-packed earth was the only sound for a long while. Lily watched the landscape roll by, the endless expanse of Texas grassland dotted with mesquite and live oak trees. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. After what felt like an hour, Yates slowed the mare to a walk. They were far from town now, surrounded by nothing but open prairie. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen, taking a long drink before handing it back to her. "You must be thirsty," he said. Lily took the canteen gratefully and drank. The water was warm but clean, and she realized she had not had anything to drink since morning. Vernon had not thought to offer her water while she waited to be sold. "Thank you," she murmured, handing it back. Yates returned the canteen to the saddlebag and then did something that surprised her. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out the contract, that hateful piece of paper that declared her his property. He held it up so she could see it clearly, then produced a match from his pocket. "What are you doing?" Lily asked, confusion coloring her voice. He struck the match against his saddle horn, and it flared to life. "Something I should have done the moment that auctioneer handed it to me." He touched the flame to the corner of the contract. The paper caught immediately, fire racing across its surface, consuming the words, the signatures, the legal binding that had made her his. Yates held it until the flames licked close to his fingers, then dropped it to the ground where it curled and blackened into ash. Lily stared at the burning paper, unable to process what she was seeing. "I do not understand." Yates turned in the saddle to look at her, and for the first time she saw emotion in his eyes. Anger, but not directed at her. Anger at what he had witnessed in town, at the injustice of it all. "No person should own another," he said firmly. "That contract meant nothing to me except as a way to get you away from that auction block. You are free, Lily Summers. You can go wherever you want, do whatever you want. I will not stop you." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes, but this time they were not from fear or shame. "I have nowhere to go. My uncle was my only family and he sold me. I have no money, no home, nothing." "Then come with me," Yates said. "Not as my property, but as my guest. I have a ranch about 5 miles from here. It is not much, just a small cabin and some grazing land, but you would be safe there. I could use help around the place, and I would pay you fair wages. You could stay until you figure out what you want to do with your life. Why would you do this for me?" Lily asked, searching his face for any sign of deception. "You spent $500 just to free me. Why?" Yates was quiet for a moment, his jaw working as he considered his answer. Finally, he said, "Because 7 years ago, when I was 12 years old, I watched my mother get sold at an auction just like that one. We were slaves on a plantation in Louisiana. After the war ended, we were supposed to be free, but some folks did not see it that way. My mother was sold to a man who took her west, and I never saw her again. I was left behind, too young to stop it, too powerless to help her." He paused, his voice thick with old pain. "I swore then that if I ever had the chance, if I ever had the means, I would stop it from happening to someone else. Today, I had $500 saved up from 7 years of working cattle drives and saving every penny. When I saw you up on that platform, I knew what I had to do." Lily's heart ached for the boy he had been, for the mother he had lost. She understood now why his eyes had held no cruelty, only that fierce determination. He was not like the other men at that auction. He had known what it felt like to be powerless, to be treated as less than human. "I am sorry about your mother," she said softly. "I hope she is safe wherever she is." "I hope so too," Yates replied. He turned back around and urged the mare forward again. "So will you come with me, at least for tonight? You can decide in the morning if you want to stay or if you want me to take you somewhere else." Lily thought about her options. She could ask him to take her to another town, try to start over somewhere new. But she had no skills beyond cooking and cleaning, no education, no prospects. And there was something about this man, this Yates Anderson, who had spent everything he had to buy her freedom, that made her feel safe for the first time in months. "I will come with you," she said. "Thank you, Yates. Thank you for what you did back there." He nodded but did not say anything more. They rode on as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the prairie. Lily found herself studying the back of his head, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the strong line of his shoulders. He was probably in his early 20s, not much older than she was, but he carried himself with a maturity born of hardship and hard work. As the sky darkened, a small cabin came into view, silhouetted against the sunset. It was simple, built from rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney rising from one side. A small barn stood nearby, and a wooden fence enclosed a modest corral where a few cattle grazed. It was humble, but it looked solid and well-maintained. Yates guided the mare to the barn and dismounted, then helped Lily down. Her legs were stiff from the ride, and she stumbled slightly. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow, his touch gentle. "Let me take care of the horse, and then I will show you inside," he said. Lily nodded and waited while he unsaddled the mare, brushed her down, and made sure she had water and feed. She watched him work, noting the easy competence with which he moved, the care he took with the animal. A man who treated his horse well was likely to treat people well too, her father had always said. When he was finished, Yates led her to the cabin. He pushed open the door and stepped aside to let her enter first. The interior was simple but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a rough table and 2 chairs occupied the center of the room, and a single bed stood in the far corner. Shelves held basic supplies, cooking utensils, a few books. It smelled of wood smoke and leather. "It is not fancy," Yates said, sounding almost apologetic. "But it is warm and dry." "It is wonderful," Lily said honestly. After the ordeal of the day, anywhere that offered safety and shelter seemed like a palace. Yates moved to the fireplace and began building a fire. "You can have the bed. I will sleep on the floor." "I cannot take your bed," Lily protested. "You have already done so much for me." "I have slept on harder floors than this one," he replied, not looking up from his work. "Besides, you are my guest. I insist." The kindling caught, and soon flames were crackling merrily, casting dancing light across the cabin walls. Yates stood and brushed off his hands. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Lily realized she was starving. She had not eaten since the previous evening. "Yes, very." "I have some beans and salt pork. Not much, but it will fill your stomach." He set about preparing a simple meal, and Lily watched, feeling useless. "Can I help?" "Not tonight," Yates said. "Tonight you rest. Tomorrow, if you decide to stay, there will be plenty of work to share." They ate in comfortable silence, sitting at the small table. The food was plain but good, and Lily savored every bite. After dinner, Yates heated water for washing up, discreetly turning his back while Lily cleaned the dust of the day from her face and hands. As the evening wore on, exhaustion settled over Lily like a heavy blanket. The events of the day, the fear and uncertainty, and finally the unexpected salvation, had drained her completely. She could barely keep her eyes open. "You should sleep," Yates said gently. "You have been through a lot today." Lily nodded and moved to the bed. It was narrow but comfortable, the blankets worn but clean. She sat down and looked at Yates, who was spreading a bedroll on the floor near the fireplace. "Yates," she said. He looked up. "Yes." "Why did you never try to find your mother? After the war, after you were older?" His expression grew distant. "I tried. I spent 2 years searching every town from Louisiana to Texas, but the trail went cold somewhere in Arkansas. I never found out where that man took her. Eventually, I had to accept that she might be dead, or that she might not want to be found. Some memories are too painful to revisit." "I am sorry," Lily said again, feeling the inadequacy of the words. "Do not be sorry," Yates replied. "Just live your life free. That is the best thing you can do for yourself and for everyone who never got the chance." Lily lay down and pulled the blankets up to her chin. From her vantage point, she could see Yates settling onto his bedroll, his back to her, his arm pillowed under his head. The firelight played across the cabin walls, and outside, the sounds of the prairie at night filtered through the gaps in the logs. Crickets chirped, an owl hooted in the distance, and somewhere far off, a coyote howled. Despite everything, Lily felt safe. For the first time since her parents had died, she felt like maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. The next morning, Lily woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She sat up, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Yates was at the stove cooking breakfast, already dressed and looking like he had been up for hours. "Good morning," he said when he noticed her stirring. "I hope I did not wake you." "No, not at all," Lily replied, pushing the blankets aside. She realized she had slept in her clothes, the same dress she had worn to the auction. It was wrinkled and dusty, and she felt self-conscious. "I am afraid I do not have any women's clothes here," Yates said, as if reading her thoughts. "But there is a general store in town. If you decide to stay, we can get you some proper things." Lily stood and smoothed her skirts as best she could. "About that, I have been thinking about your offer." Yates turned to face her fully, his expression neutral but his eyes watchful. "And I would like to stay," Lily said. "If the offer still stands. I do not have anywhere else to go, and I would like to earn my own way. If you will teach me what needs to be done around the ranch, I promise I will work hard." A small smile tugged at the corners of Yates's mouth, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger and less careworn. "The offer stands. I would be glad to have the help. Running this place alone has been harder than I expected." They ate breakfast together, and then Yates showed Lily around the property. The ranch was modest, just 20 acres with a dozen head of cattle and a vegetable garden that was struggling in the Texas heat. There was a chicken coop that housed 4 hens and a rooster, and a small smokehouse for preserving meat. "I have been working on building up the herd," Yates explained as they walked the fence line. "Eventually, I want to have enough cattle to drive to market in Abilene or Dodge City. That is where the real money is. But for now, I sell beef and leather to the folks in Gonzales and the surrounding homesteads." "How did you come to own this land?" Lily asked. "Worked for it," Yates said simply. "After I stopped looking for my mother, I hired on with a cattle outfit. Spent 3 years driving herds north. It was dangerous work, but it paid. I saved every dollar I could. When I had enough, I bought this land from a man who was heading back east. It was run down when I got it, but I have been fixing it up." Lily could see the pride in his eyes as he surveyed his property. This was not just a ranch to him. It was proof that he had made something of himself, that he was more than the slave boy who had lost his mother. Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Yates would wake before dawn to tend to the cattle and horses. Lily would prepare breakfast, then spend her mornings working in the garden, trying to coax vegetables from the stubborn soil. In the afternoons, Yates taught her how to mend fences, how to milk the cow he had recently acquired, how to churn butter and smoke meat. She proved to be a quick learner, and he was a patient teacher. They talked while they worked, sharing stories from their lives. Lily told him about her childhood, about her parents who had run a small general store in Gonzales before they died. Her mother from fever, her father from a broken heart 2 years later. She told him about how her Uncle Vernon had seemed kind at first, but how the drinking and gambling had gradually consumed him until he was a stranger wearing a familiar face. Yates told her about growing up on the plantation, about his mother who had sung to him every night and taught him to read using a stolen Bible, about the day the war ended and the brief, shining hope that had followed, only to be crushed when his mother was taken from him, about the years of wandering and searching before he finally found a purpose in the vast expanse of Texas. As the weeks passed, Lily found herself growing stronger. Her hands, which had been soft from her years living with her uncle, developed calluses from work. Her skin turned golden from hours in the sun. She felt useful, purposeful, in a way she never had before, and she found herself watching Yates more and more, noticing things about him she had not seen at first. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed at something she said. The gentle way he handled the animals, even the stubborn rooster that pecked at everyone. The quiet strength in his hands when he helped her lift something heavy, never making her feel weak or incapable, just offering assistance as a friend would. One evening, about a month after she had arrived at the ranch, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. It had become their custom, this quiet time at the end of the day when the work was done and the air was finally cooling. Yates whittled at a piece of wood, his knife moving in sure, steady strokes while Lily mended a tear in his shirt. "You are good at that," Yates observed, nodding at her needlework. "My mother taught me," Lily said. "She said a woman should know how to sew well enough to make her stitches invisible." "She would be proud of you," Yates said. "You have done well here, Lily. Better than I expected, honestly. Most folks from town would not last a week doing ranch work." Lily felt warmth spread through her chest at his praise. "I like it here. I like the work, the simplicity of it. Wake up, do what needs to be done, sleep, and do it again. There is something honest about it." "There is," Yates agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I am glad you stayed. It is nice having someone to talk to. Gets lonely out here sometimes." "I am glad I stayed too," Lily said softly. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. The same unspoken communication that had happened at the auction, but deeper now, weighted with a month of shared work and conversation. Yates looked away first, returning his attention to his whittling, but Lily saw the faint color that had risen in his cheeks. The next day, they made the trip into Gonzales for supplies. It was Lily's first time back in town since the auction, and she felt nervous as they rode in on Yates's wagon, the mare pulling them along at a steady pace. She wondered what people would say, how they would look at her, but Yates seemed unconcerned. He helped her down from the wagon and walked beside her to the general store, his presence solid and reassuring. People did stare, and whispers followed in their wake, but Yates ignored them all, and Lily tried to do the same. Inside the store, the proprietor, Mr. Henderson, looked up from his ledger with surprise. "Mr. Anderson, Miss Summers, what can I do for you today? We need supplies," Yates said, pulling a list from his pocket. "Flour, sugar, salt, coffee. And Miss Summers needs some fabric for dresses, and whatever else women need for proper clothes." Mr. Henderson's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline, but he said nothing, just began gathering the items on the list. His wife, Mrs. Henderson, emerged from the back room and approached Lily. "Come with me, dear," she said, her voice kind. "Let us see what we can find for you." Lily followed her to the fabric section, where bolts of cloth in various colors and patterns were displayed. Mrs. Henderson pulled down several options, chattering about which would be most practical for ranch work and which would be suitable for church on Sundays. "It is good to see you looking well," Mrs. Henderson said quietly, her eyes meeting Lily's. "We were all worried about you after what Vernon did. It was a shameful thing, selling his own niece like that." "I am well, thank you," Lily said, running her hand over a bolt of sturdy blue cotton. "Mr. Anderson has been very kind." "I am glad to hear it," Mrs. Henderson said. "He is a good man, that one. Keeps to himself mostly, but always fair in his dealings. You could do worse." Lily felt her cheeks flush. "It is not like that. I just work on his ranch." "Of course, dear," Mrs. Henderson said, but her knowing smile suggested she did not believe it for a moment. They selected fabric for 2 everyday dresses and 1 nicer one for special occasions, along with thread, needles, and a ready-made pair of sturdy boots that actually fit Lily's feet. When they returned to the front of the store, Yates was settling up with Mr. Henderson. "How much for the fabric and notions?" Yates asked. $8.50, Mr. Henderson replied. Yates counted out the money, and Lily felt a pang of guilt. "You do not have to pay for all this. I can sew the dresses and pay you back out of my wages." "Your wages are for you to keep or spend as you like," Yates said firmly. "This is an investment in the ranch. You cannot work in a torn dress and worn-out shoes." Before Lily could argue further, the door to the general store burst open, and Vernon Summers stumbled in, clearly drunk even though it was barely noon. His eyes landed on Lily, and his face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Well, well," he slurred, "if it is not my ungrateful niece. Come back to town to flaunt yourself, have you?" Lily took a step back, her heart pounding. Yates moved smoothly between her and Vernon, his stance relaxed but ready. "Mr. Summers," he said calmly, "I think you should leave." "Leave?" Vernon laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "This is a public store. I have as much right to be here as you. More, since I have lived in this town for 20 years and you are just some drifter who rode in with money to throw around. The money I spent buying your niece's freedom, Yates said, his voice still calm but with an edge to it now. Money you took gladly enough. Freedom, Vernon spat. I sold her fair and square. She is your property now, bought and paid for. You can dress it up however you like, but that is the truth. The contract is burned, Yates said. She is free to go wherever she wants, whenever she wants. She chooses to work on my ranch and I pay her for that work. That is all there is to it. Vernon's face turned purple with rage. You burned a legal contract. That is destruction of property. I could have you arrested. Try it, Yates said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. Go to the sheriff and explain how you sold a human being in 1878, 13 years after slavery was abolished. See how sympathetic he is. Vernon opened his mouth to respond, but Mr. Henderson cut him off. Vernon, you need to leave my store. You are drunk and causing a disturbance. Go home and sleep it off. This is not over, Vernon snarled, pointing a shaking finger at Yates. You think you can come into my town, steal my property, and there will be no consequences. You are wrong. He turned and staggered out, slamming the door behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence fell over the store. Lily realized she was shaking, and Yates turned to her, his anger fading into concern. Are you all right? He asked gently. Yes, Lily said, though her voice trembled. I am sorry. I should not have come to town. You have every right to come to town, Yates said firmly. Vernon is a drunk and a bully, and he has no claim on you. Do not let him make you feel otherwise. Mrs. Henderson came over and patted Lily's hand. Mr. Anderson is right, dear. Your uncle has made his bed and now he must lie in it. Everyone in town knows what he did was wrong. Do not give him another thought. They finished their shopping and loaded everything into the wagon. As they drove out of town, Lily could not shake the feeling that Vernon's words had been more than just the ranting of a drunk man. There had been real menace in his eyes, real hatred. She worried what he might do, but over the next few weeks, nothing happened. Life on the ranch continued peacefully. Lily finished sewing her new dresses and packed away the tattered one she had worn to the auction, glad to be rid of it. The garden began to thrive under her care, yielding tomatoes and squash and beans. The cattle remained healthy, and Yates was able to sell 2 steers to a passing trail drive, bringing in some much-needed cash, and through it all, Lily and Yates grew closer. It happened gradually in small moments. The brush of hands as they both reached for the same tool. The way Yates's eyes would seek her out when he thought she was not looking. The sound of her laughter at one of his dry observations about the stubborn rooster. The feeling of safety and rightness she felt whenever he was near. One evening, Lily was preparing dinner when Yates came in from the barn, his shirt torn and his arm bleeding. What happened? Lily exclaimed, rushing over to him. One of the fence posts broke while I was repairing it, Yates said, looking embarrassed. A splinter caught my arm. It is nothing serious. Sit down, Lily ordered, pointing to a chair. Let me see. Yates obeyed, and Lily fetched water and clean cloth. She carefully cleaned the wound, which was long but shallow, and picked out a few splinters that had embedded themselves in his skin. Yates watched her face as she worked, and when she glanced up, their eyes met and held. You are very gentle, he said softly. I do not want to hurt you, Lily replied, equally soft. You could never hurt me, Yates said. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Lily's hand stilled on his arm, and she suddenly became acutely aware of how close they were, how she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, how his eyes had darkened to the color of slate. Lily, Yates said, his voice rough. I need to tell you something. What is it? She asked, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. These past 2 months, having you here, working beside you, talking with you, I have felt something I have not felt in a long time. Maybe ever." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "I am not good at this. I have spent most of my life alone, learning to depend on no one but myself. But with you, I do not want to be alone anymore." "Yates," Lily whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I know it is too soon," he continued. "I know you probably see me as just the man who bought you, who gave you a place to stay when you had nowhere else to go. But I need you to know that I care about you, Lily Summers. I care about you in a way that has nothing to do with that auction or that damned contract I burned. I care about you because you are strong and brave and kind, because you make me laugh, because coming home to this cabin is a joy now instead of just a relief from the day's work." A tear slipped down Lily's cheek, and Yates reached up, gently wiping it away with his thumb. "You do not have to say anything," he said. "I just needed you to know how I feel." "Yates," Lily said again, finding her voice. "You are not just the man who bought me. You are the man who freed me, the man who gave me back my life. And these past 2 months I have felt something too. Something I was afraid to name because I did not know if you felt the same way." "What do you feel?" Yates asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Safe," Lily said. "Happy, like I have finally found where I belong. And more than that, I feel my heart race every time you walk into a room. I feel warm when you smile at me. I find myself looking for excuses to be near you, to talk to you, to hear your voice." Yates's hand moved from her cheek to cup the side of her face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "Is it too soon to say I am falling in love with you?" "No," Lily breathed. "Because I am falling in love with you too." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but she did not. When his lips met hers, it was soft and gentle, a question and an answer all at once. Lily's eyes fluttered closed, and she let herself sink into the kiss, into the feeling of his hand in her hair, his other arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "I will court you proper," he said. "No matter what anyone says about how we met or the circumstances that brought you here. I will court you the right way, and if you will have me, I will marry you and spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." "I would like that," Lily said, smiling through her tears. "I would like that very much." They spent the evening talking about the future, about their hopes and dreams. Yates wanted to expand the ranch, maybe buy the adjacent property if it ever came up for sale. Lily wanted to start a real garden, big enough to sell vegetables in town, maybe even preserve enough to get them through the winter without having to buy so much from the store. They talked about building a bigger house, one with separate rooms and a proper kitchen. They talked about children someday when they were ready. It felt natural, this planning of a shared future. It felt right. Over the next months, Yates made good on his promise to court Lily properly. Every Sunday, they would dress in their best clothes and drive into Gonzales for church services. Afterwards, they would have a picnic lunch by the creek that ran just outside of town. Yates brought Lily wildflowers from the prairie, and she pressed them between the pages of one of his books. He taught her to ride horseback on her own, and she proved to be a natural, soon racing him across the grasslands, her laughter ringing out across the prairie. They faced their share of challenges. Vernon continued to drink and gamble, and twice he showed up at the ranch, demanding money, claiming that Yates owed him for taking his niece. Each time, Yates sent him away, calmly but firmly, making it clear that Vernon was not welcome. After the second time, Vernon stopped coming, but Lily would sometimes see him in town, glaring at them from across the street. There were also the whispers and stares from the townspeople. Some approved of Yates and Lily's relationship, seeing it as a redemption of sorts. Others thought it was scandalous, that Lily should have left Gonzales entirely rather than staying with the man who had bought her. But Yates and Lily ignored the gossip, focusing instead on building their life together. As winter approached, Yates began spending his evenings carving something from a piece of oak wood. He would not tell Lily what it was, working on it only after she had gone to bed, but she caught glimpses of it sometimes, smooth curves and intricate details. Then, on a cold December evening, 6 months after he had burned the contract, Yates asked Lily to come out to the porch with him. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and followed him outside. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by any nearby lights, and a sliver of moon hung low on the horizon. "Lily," Yates said, taking both her hands in his, "these past months have been the happiest of my life. Every day I wake up grateful that I walked into that auction, that I had the means to get you out of there, that you chose to stay with me." "Yates," Lily said, her heart swelling with emotion. "Let me finish," he said with a small smile. "I am not good with words, so I need to get this out while I still have the courage." He released one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out the piece of oak he had been carving. In the moonlight, Lily could see that it was a small box, beautifully crafted with flowers carved into the lid. Yates opened the box, and inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, was a simple gold ring. "It was my mother's," Yates said, his voice thick with emotion. "The only thing of hers I have left. She gave it to me the day before she was taken, told me to keep it safe, that maybe someday I would have someone to give it to." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the ring. "Lily Summers," Yates said, sinking down onto one knee, "will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love for the rest of our days?" "Yes," Lily said, the word coming out as a sob. "Yes, Yates, of course I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as the stars wheeled overhead and the prairie wind sang around them. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Gonzales. Mrs. Henderson and several of the other townswomen helped Lily sew a simple white dress, and Yates bought a new suit for the occasion, black wool that made him look handsome and serious. The church was not full, but the people who came were there out of genuine affection and support. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, the sheriff and his wife, a few of the neighboring ranchers who Yates had befriended through cattle sales. Vernon did not come. Lily had not expected him to, but part of her had hoped that he might set aside his bitterness for one day, might wish her well. But when she walked down the aisle and saw Yates waiting for her at the altar, his eyes shining with love and wonder, she forgot all about her uncle. The ceremony was simple but moving. They exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever trials life might bring. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Yates kissed her, Lily felt like her heart might burst with happiness. The townswomen had organized a small reception in the church hall, with cake and punch and well wishes. Lily and Yates stayed for a polite amount of time, thanking everyone for coming before slipping away and driving back to their ranch, their home. That night, as man and wife, they came together with tenderness and love, learning each other's bodies, giving and receiving pleasure in equal measure. Afterwards, lying in each other's arms in the narrow bed that would soon need to be replaced with something bigger, Lily felt a sense of completeness she had never known. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Yates replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." The first year of their marriage was full of hard work and simple joys. They expanded the cattle herd, and Yates hired on a young man named Thomas to help with the heavier ranch work. Lily's garden flourished, and she began selling vegetables in town, earning enough money to buy chickens and start a small egg business. They saved every penny they could, planning for the future. In the spring, Lily discovered she was with child. She had suspected for a few weeks but had not said anything, wanting to be sure. When she finally told Yates, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." Lily glowed with happiness through her pregnancy, even as her belly grew round and the Texas heat made her uncomfortable. Yates was attentive and protective, insisting she not work too hard, bringing her cool drinks and fanning her when she got overheated. They spent the evenings choosing names and making plans, Yates building a cradle from oak wood, as beautiful and carefully crafted as the box he had made for her ring. In November, a year and a month after they had married, Lily went into labor. Mrs. Henderson came to help, having delivered dozens of babies over her years in Gonzales. Yates paced outside, too nervous to sit still, while Lily labored through the long night. Just before dawn, a baby's cry pierced the air. Yates rushed inside to find Mrs. Henderson wrapping a squirming bundle in a soft blanket. "You have a son," she announced, beaming. "A healthy, strong boy." Yates approached the bed where Lily lay, exhausted but radiant. She held out the baby to him, and he took his son with trembling hands, staring down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the perfect little fingers that grasped at the air. "He is beautiful," Yates said, his voice choked with emotion. "He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Lily asked. They had discussed names endlessly but had never quite decided. Now, looking at his son, Yates knew. "Samuel," he said, "after the prophet who heard God's call, and if you agree, his middle name should be James, after your father." "Samuel James Anderson," Lily said, testing the name. "It is perfect." Over the next years, their family and their ranch both grew. Lily gave birth to 2 more children, a daughter they named Rose Elizabeth when Samuel was 3, and another son, Henry Michael, 2 years after that. The cabin was expanded into a proper house, with 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a sitting room. The cattle herd numbered over 100 head, and Yates made successful drives to market, earning enough money that they were no longer just surviving but actually prospering. Vernon died when Samuel was 5, his liver finally giving out from years of abuse. Lily felt a complicated grief when she heard the news. She had never forgiven him for what he had done, but he had been family once, had cared for her after her parents died, even if he had ultimately betrayed her. Yates held her while she cried, understanding that she was mourning not the man Vernon had become, but the uncle he had once been. The ranch became known throughout the area for its quality cattle and Lily's prized vegetables. Neighboring ranchers would stop by to trade advice or share news, and their home became a gathering place for the small but growing community. Yates and Lily worked side by side, partners in every sense of the word, building something that would last, something they could pass on to their children. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they stood on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the prairie. Their children played in the yard, Samuel teaching Rose how to rope a fence post while Henry chased the rooster around, shrieking with laughter. "You ever think about that day?" Lily asked, leaning against Yates's shoulder. "The day of the auction." "Sometimes," Yates admitted, "though it feels like it happened to different people in a different life." "In a way it did," Lily said. "We were different people then. You were a young man alone, and I was a girl with no future." "And now?" Yates asked, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Now we are us," Lily said simply. "A family, partners. We have built a good life here, Yates. A life I never could have imagined when I was standing on that platform, terrified and alone. "You were never alone," Yates said. "Not from the moment I saw you. I knew even then that you were meant to be part of my life. I just did not know how important a part you would become." "Do you think your mother would be proud?" Lily asked gently. "Of what you have built, of the man you have become?" Yates was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. "I hope so. I like to think that wherever she is, she knows that her son is free, that he has a family who loves him, that he has built something good and true. And I hope she knows that I never forgot her, never stopped loving her, even after I stopped searching." "I am sure she knows," Lily said, squeezing his hand. They watched their children play as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue. The stars began to emerge one by one, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, the births of their children, and all the small, precious moments in between. "I love you, Lily Anderson," Yates said. "I have loved you from the moment I burned that contract, and I will love you until the stars fall from the sky." "I love you too, Yates Anderson," Lily replied. "You gave me back my freedom, my life, my future. And then you gave me your heart. I could not ask for anything more." They stood there together as night fell, two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and had chosen to build a life based on love, respect, and partnership. The ranch that Yates had built alone was now a home filled with laughter and love. The girl who had been sold like property was now a woman of strength and independence, raising children who would never know what it was like to be anything but free. As the years continued to pass, Lily and Yates watched their children grow. Samuel developed his father's quiet strength and his mother's gentle heart. He worked the ranch alongside Yates, learning everything about cattle and horses and the land. Rose was spirited and intelligent, with a talent for numbers that meant she took over managing the ranch's finances by the time she was 15. Henry was the dreamer, always reading, always asking questions about the world beyond Texas. When Samuel turned 20, he married a sweet girl named Mary from a neighboring ranch, and they built a small house on the Anderson property. A year later, they gave Lily and Yates their first grandchild, a squalling baby girl they named Lily, after her grandmother. Holding her namesake in her arms, Lily felt the circle complete itself. She thought about the terrified 19-year-old girl she had been, standing on an auction block, and marveled at how far she had come. Rose surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to go to Houston and learn bookkeeping properly, maybe even become an accountant. It was an unusual ambition for a woman, but Yates and Lily supported her, using their savings to send her to a business college. She returned 2 years later with a certificate and immediately began helping other ranchers in the area manage their finances, eventually making more money than the ranch itself brought in. Henry went east to university, studying literature and history. He wrote long letters home describing the buildings and the people and the ideas that filled his days. Though he did not return to Texas permanently, he visited often, and his letters were treasured, read aloud at the dinner table, preserving the connection across the miles. Yates and Lily grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies slowing down, but their love never diminishing. They handed over the day-to-day running of the ranch to Samuel and Mary, content to spend their days working in the garden, sitting on the porch, and watching their grandchildren play in the same yard where their own children had played. On a warm spring evening, when Yates was 56 and Lily was 54, they sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. Yates's hand sought Lily's, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "You have any regrets?" Lily asked, a question that had become something of a ritual between them over the years. "Not a single one," Yates replied, as he always did. You. Only that I cannot live this life twice, Lily said, smiling. It has been a good life, Yates, better than I ever dreamed possible. It has been a blessed life, Yates agreed. And it is not over yet. We still have years ahead of us, God willing. And they did. They watched more grandchildren be born, 12 in total. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, then their 30th. They saw Texas continue to grow and change, saw Gonzales expand from a small town to a thriving community. They saw automobiles appear on the roads, though they never owned one themselves, preferring the simple reliability of horses. Through it all, they remained devoted to each other. Their love, which had begun in the ashes of injustice and fear, had grown into something strong and enduring, a testament to the power of human connection, of choosing kindness over cruelty, of seeing the humanity in another person even when the world tried to deny it. When Yates was 72, he suffered a heart attack while working in the barn. He survived, but it weakened him, and he was never quite the same afterwards. Lily nursed him tenderly, just as she had cleaned his wounds all those years ago, her touch still gentle, her love still unwavering. One evening, lying in bed with Lily curled up beside him, Yates said, "I want you to know that these years with you have been the greatest gift of my life. You made a lonely, angry young man into a husband and a father and a grandfather. You gave me a reason to build something that would last. You gave me love, and you gave me freedom," Lily replied, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me a choice when I had none. You gave me respect when the world treated me like property. You gave me a partnership when you could have demanded obedience. You gave me everything, Yates." "We gave each other everything," Yates corrected gently. "That is what love is, Lily, giving everything and finding that you have more than you started with." He lived for 2 more years, growing frailer but never losing his sharp mind or his dry sense of humor. When he finally passed, it was peacefully in his sleep, with Lily holding his hand. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Texas. Ranchers and townspeople, old friends and distant relatives, all came to pay their respects to Yates Anderson, the man who had built a ranch from nothing, who had raised a good family, who had lived his life with integrity and purpose. Lily stood at the graveside, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and felt both profound grief and profound gratitude. She grieved the loss of the man who had been her partner for 37 years. But she was grateful for every moment they had shared, every sunrise they had watched together, every challenge they had overcome side by side. She lived for another 8 years after Yates passed, spending her days with her family, tending her garden and sitting on the porch in the evening, sometimes talking to Yates as if he was still there beside her. Her children worried that she was lonely, but Lily assured them she was not. "Your father is still with me," she would say. "I feel him in the wind on the prairie, in the warmth of the sun, in the laughter of our grandchildren. He is here." When Lily finally passed at the age of 81, it was with a smile on her face, her hand reaching out as if to grasp another hand waiting for her. She was buried next to Yates under a large oak tree they had planted together 40 years earlier. On her headstone, beneath her name and the dates of her life, her children had inscribed words that captured the essence of her story. She was bound, but she was freed. She was alone, but she found love. She was bought, but she was priceless. She lived well, and she was beloved. And the ranch that Yates had built, the home that he and Lily had filled with love and laughter, continued on, passed down through the generations, a testament to what 2 people can build when they choose love over fear, freedom over bondage, and each other over everything else. The story of how they met, of the auction and the burned contract, became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. And while the details might have changed slightly with each telling, the heart of the story remained true. That love can be found in the darkest places, that one act of courage and compassion can change everything, and that the greatest legacies are built not from wealth or power, but from the simple choice to treat each other with dignity, respect, and love. The Anderson Ranch still stands to this day, over 140 years after Yates first bought the land. It has been expanded and modernized, but the original house that Yates built still forms its heart. And on the porch of that house, if you sit quietly in the evening and listen, you can almost hear the echoes of two voices, laughing and talking, planning and dreaming, loving and living, together for all time. The land remembers them. The wind carries their names. And the stars that witnessed their first kiss still shine overhead, eternal and unchanging, just like the love story of Yates Anderson and Lily Summers, the cowboy who bought her freedom and the woman who gave him a home.